Good afternoon, everyone. It's now 4 p.m. on Thursday, January 20, 2022, and I call to order the committee meeting for the Bibb County Board of Education. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for braving the weather. First on the agenda, we have Instructional Services Committee. Dr. Garrett is the chair.
Thank you, President Morton, and welcome, everyone. First, we have on the agenda tonight two presentations. We don't have any action items tonight. The first one is Maximizing Student Success, Effective Student Master Schedules, presented by Dr. Rory Rogers and Kevin Adams.
Good afternoon, President Morton, board members, and Dr. Jones. This evening, I would like to present information concerning our kickoff of Maximizing Scheduling, which is a component of our 3E initiative. I would also like to acknowledge that we do have our high school principals with us today as we are going through this presentation. What we believe in, our vision: each student will demonstrate strength of character and will be college or career ready. Our mission: the Bibb County School District develops a highly trained staff and an engaged community dedicated to educating each student for a 21st century global society. And our values: competence, loyalty, open communication, defined autonomy, and honor. These are items that we have been able to integrate in the Maximizing Scheduling. How we maintain accountability: we have our non-negotiables. We also discuss the results period. We want to ensure that we have these experiences for our staff and our students and our families that will ultimately lead to the results that we would like. We want to stay above the line. And our newest addition, Tier 1 Strong, ensuring our students perform on or above grade level, teaching and reinforcing positive academic and social behaviors, consistently implementing evidence-based strategies, and continually collaborating to improve student outcomes. That last bullet is very important because this has been an effort of collaboration. Victory in our schools, our strategic map. We have the 5 goal areas, and we start from the bottom with learning and growth because that's the foundation. And as we go up the map, it leads to student achievement. We have the 6 strategic priorities as well. Priority number 1, to get students reading on grade level. Number 2, be successful on the Georgia Milestones. 3, increase the number of students in school every day. 4, close the knowing doing gap. 5, work hard to support schools. And number 6, establish a culture of accountability for everyone. But why? Why is this so important, the Maximizing Scheduling? Almost 2 years ago, the district went through a needs assessment. We gathered data. We had a root cause analysis. We wanted to know why we were seeing that we had some students, even though our graduation rate, we have definitely improved, but we wanted to see how we could reach the other students to ensure that all students are able to graduate. We also wanted to see how can we ensure that all students have with them the opportunity of all the various options allowed through the Georgia State Board of Education. So we wanted to create clarity and improve our internal processes as it relates to our monthly planning guide. We wanted to support innovative approaches that strategically place students in course pathways that will meet their needs. And as I stated, we wanted to provide an opportunity for our schools that could impact post-secondary readiness, increase our graduation rate, and making sure all options are available to our students. The school master schedule is very important. That first bullet highlights that it's the instructional leader's most important tool. It drives down to is the school's philosophy, a reflection of its vision, and a blueprint for its resource allocation. Another way of looking at a school's master schedule in that second bullet affects what students learn, who teaches them, who learns with them, and if they are likely to graduate. And lastly, from Ms. Harper, from Building a Master School Schedule Boosts Student Success, it is to improve outcomes for our students and to promote equity. We assembled a district core team of all the different departments within our district. You'll see that we have district effectiveness and federal programs, teaching and learning. We had our executive officers involved, student affairs, and information technology. In order to really hone in on the importance of maximizing scheduling, we had a kickoff right after the Thanksgiving break on November the 30th. The kickoff agenda is present on this slide. We started off with a breakfast, and it was off campus. And we had greetings. And you'll see that we integrated some members from our community, such as Mr. Finley, the president and CEO at Atrium Health Navicent. We had a general session, and then we also had someone to talk about the armed forces, Staff Sergeant Tanya Williams. And then we had breakout rooms. Those breakout rooms were for the different grade levels. We had an elementary breakout room, middle school, and high school, because the work is different depending on which grade level you are working with. And then we ended with a powerful message from Dr. Ivan Allen, president of Central Georgia Technical College. He really brought home the E of enrollment, how we can use dual enrollment options to really maximize a student's success, both academic as well as preparing for the workforce. Who was involved in this kickoff? It was every elementary, middle school, and high school principal, assistant principal, counselor, and registrar. Why was that important? We wanted everyone to hear the same message, because this was going to be something that will change some of the ways that we have been doing things. And therefore, we thought it was important to ensure everyone heard the message at the same time. The one part that I wanted to ensure that you left with is that we ensured that everyone had a clear understanding of who needed to be at the table at their school. The principal, assistant principals, counselor, department chairs, the PEC lead, the gifted lead, RTI, EIP, ELL, the school registrar, and the FTE coordinator. These roles are important. We did not want anyone to feel that it's just a registrar or it's a counselor. It really will take all roles at the table to ensure that we are scheduling students for ultimate success. Now, there was a deliverable. Our teams left with a 12-month timeline outline of various actions based on their level, HS for high school, all in K through 12, MS for middle school, and then we also had the E for elementary. Again, based on their level, We also identified at the district level who was responsible for that work. That means who was the lead to help ensure that their team had what was needed and when. And then the due date. This will help with continuity across the board. I would like to bring your attention to the bottom line. Finalize the master schedule structure for high school. Mr. Kevin Adams will now come forth and talk about that particular action step that's part of our district maximizing scheduling timeline. Mr. Adams?
Good evening. I'm here to talk to you tonight about what it is that our high schools are looking at as their option. In particular, we'll be looking at the hybrid schedule option. To introduce this, I want you to kind of imagine a situation where you're looking at picking out a family vehicle. It's very similar to a school picking out what schedule configuration they want to utilize at their school. There's lots of options. Each of those options have various features. With any choice, there's pros and there's cons. One of those factors we must consider are the costs associated, and we recognize that we can't get one of everything. We've got to narrow it down to a single choice. When you look at the options that are explored, some of these may be familiar to you. We had the traditional option, which you can compare to your family sedan. We had a block option that wanted to be considered, that big truck. We also had a modified block, a little bit different variation on a truck. There was some conversation about a trimester, maybe your three-wheeled vehicle, and then a hybrid, a combination of things that will give us some options to explore. As we look at that, a lot of the schools throughout our state, the two most prevalent are that block and traditional option. And we wanted to consider the desirable features of those two, and when merged together, give us a hybrid schedule option. So we clarified for our principals, our high school principals, that we really had two choices that were supportable at the district level. The traditional schedule we've been on with a 7-period day. The students have the same classes all year long with roughly 50-minute classes. Or this new exploration of a hybrid option, where many of our students will be on a 5-period day with some on a 6 or 7. With that 5-period day, 2 of those will be blocks at 105 minutes in length, and 3 of those courses will be traditional at 50 minutes in length. To give you a feel for what that would look like from a student perspective, we would be looking at blocking courses during the 1st and 2nd period and or the 5th and 6th period. So as you move across this diagram from left to right, the first set of experiences there would be the student that would take advantage of blocking both in the morning and in the afternoon, the one that would have 2 block courses and 3 traditional courses. As you move from left to right, you see there's a morning block only, where a student may choose to just block in the morning and have traditional classes for the duration of the day. Or the one where they would have the afternoon block instead of the morning. Or perhaps a student, based on the choices they need to make for their desired courses, may end up with no blocks, and it would look more like a traditional 7-period day. So students in our district would be participating in one of those 4 types, depending on the needs they have for their particular courses. Here's just a glance at what that may look like for our teachers when we're looking at common planning. So this is simply a sample illustration. This is not exactly what may happen, but a possibility. If our schools chose to have their social studies teachers have common planning, for example, in that 1st period, ELA in the 3rd, science in the 4th, and math in the 7th, one thing to consider here is whichever course is going to have that common planning, whichever group of teachers would have that common planning during 1st period, that would mean they would not be able to offer blocked courses during that 1st, 2nd block, but could offer it during the 5th and 6th. What you'll see with the ELA science and math in this example is they would have the opportunity to offer courses blocked in the morning and in the afternoon. So when we started to look at the pros and the cons of the hybrid schedule, what we established as a team is there was only 5 classes in one day as a pro for our students, so that they can focus on those 5 classes as opposed to 7 at one time. But for those that need it, they have the flexibility to have 6 or 7 classes per day. The student schedules would be the same each day as opposed to some of the other options that were explored. A big piece is this would give our students full access to all that Hutchins College and Career Academy offers to our students. We'd have longer class period for select courses, which can be advantageous. This offers acceleration opportunities, which could lead to more dual enrollment choices for our students. And for those that need the recovery options, if they're failing at the end of that first semester, they really have two routes to take. One that they've traditionally done with the Edgenuity and continuing with the second semester, but they could also re-enroll in a blocked course for that same course and get a full face-to-face experience with one of our teachers. And finally, with fewer classes in the day, there's also less transitions, which is beneficial to our students at each school. The cons really apply to what would be experienced by our teachers. A teacher, for example, here that was teaching algebra may have had just that one prep, but if they go to teaching algebra both full year and block, that essentially becomes two preps for them, as they have to prepare for two different sequencing and pacings of the course. That would in a similar manner impact our PLCs that are working hard together to ensure that they offer instruction that is best for our students. And so they would not be offering assessments at the same time for the year-long course as the block course, and so therefore would not have the same data to analyze together when you're looking at those two different groups of teachers, and so that would have an impact there. We believe that that can be overcome with their work on the common planning times across our school district. This was an example provided to our principals to get a feel for what the experience would be for an individual student all the way through their high school experience. And so you'll see in this example, the student in 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th is taking advantage of both a morning block and an afternoon block. If you look at that freshman year, they would take environmental science in the first semester, finish that course, and move into their freshman seminar during second semester. Similar in the afternoon, they may have an elective first semester and Algebra 1 that they would cover second semester, along with some traditional courses. This would continue throughout those 4 years as they took advantage of the opportunity to have the block courses and the traditional courses all along. The thing you'll see added here is that 0 period, which is ignore the number of 0, but just more importantly, look at the opportunity that outside of the 7 days, we also wanted to make sure our principals were fully aware that our students can experience dual enrollment outside of the traditional 7-period day through our system. If they were to take advantage of that in the 9th grade year with the current rules from the state, they would be paying for that themselves there in 9th grade, but can take advantage of what the state offers with their 30 hours beyond that. Once we showed this illustration to our high school principals, we broke them into groups to explore for themselves what it might be like to schedule students using this hybrid schedule. And so one group was working with an identified 3E ready student that was planning to attend a 4-year college or university and wanted to play football or baseball with a desire to major in a healthcare field. And the other group looked at scheduling a 3E ready student planning to attend a 2-year technical college with the desire to major in industrial system technology, but making sure that they recognized the student was entering high school with deficiencies in math and English. During that exploration, our student that was going to be looking at the 4-year college, you'll see here in their 9th grade year, taking advantage of just the morning block, but not the afternoon. In 10th grade, they are blocking both morning and afternoon. And then 11th and 12th, you'll see at the beginning of the day, they're taking advantage of what's offered over at Hutchins. During that sophomore year, I want to point out the afternoon, they're able to take care of both of their foreign language requirements in a single year back-to-back, which offers some continuity that they may not have as much of, taking them 1 year after the next, or perhaps with a gap year. This student also wanted to benefit from preparing for their high school sports by taking advantage of that weight training in the afternoon, and this gives them that flexibility to continue that process. When our other group started to explore, they considered option B. And we'll talk about that more in just a moment, but if you look at what's taking place in 9th and 10th grade, in particular in 9th grade, you'll see they're taking the Foundations of Algebra course and Algebra 1 in back-to-back semesters, with the opportunity to also take advantage of a support class as needed. And you'll see the reading enrichment that is offered there to help take advantage of the fact that this student is entering with those math and reading deficiencies. They're able to double up then in their 10th grade year to get some extra courses in their ELA path so that they are ready to take advantage of option B. When we look at option B, it is an opportunity that they can take advantage of where they can move on to a college experience in their 11th and 12th grade years. They have to have taken a certain number of courses in those 9th and 10th grade years so that they are prepared to do just that when they get to 11th and 12th, and can then graduate with both a high school diploma as well as that college credit. This shows a little bit of a demonstration about what's available for perhaps some of our IB students. And then we went in and we asked our principals to provide us some feedback. We wanted to look at what it was they thought may be an opportunity. This is a taste of the feedback and questions they had as they went through this exploration of these opportunities. So just give you a moment to look at those. Just some additional feedback and responses that they had as we had some very collaborative dialogue about what the hybrid may mean for those schools. And then ultimately, the decision was put in front of them to choose collaboratively and cohesively whether they wanted to move forward with what we've been doing with a traditional schedule or whether they wanted to implement the hybrid schedule for our students in 22-23. They had their discussion and they agreed. Here is a copy of that email where they agreed they wanted to move forward with the hybrid opportunity as a unified group of high school principals. And then here is a short video showing off our maximizing schedule. Are there any questions?
Mr. Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good evening. Good evening, Dr. Rogers and Mr. Adams. Thank you for being here with us today. First, I want to say great presentation, and I think our principals made a great decision in choosing this choice. I did have a couple of questions, just looking on the Padlet of the principal questions and feedback. I was curious in looking at some of the thoughts of our principals and wondering how that conversation went about with those questions. But one was in regards to our students who are in need of, who may be in need of credit recovery. So with this new model, how do we ensure that students who need credit recovery are able to get that, but also will be able to still be on track, for graduation and, and be able to get the classes they need within that particular grade level as well?
All right, so several of the questions that came up from the Padlet, we were able to address during the course of the meeting. We were monitoring those as they came in, and that was one that we definitely had a discussion with them about the fact that with that blocking option, a student that maybe is off track, whether it's because of the way they entered or because of a mistake they made along the way, they can make up ground with those back-to-back blocks. For example, if a student were to fail algebra in their freshman year, they could come back that sophomore year as needed and take algebra first semester, geometry second semester, and get back on track to finish 4 maths during 4 years of high school. Total credits are still going to be the same opportunity there, where they do have some wiggle room, if you will, to be able to graduate on time with having a setback of a course like that. But we also will continue to have our edgenuity opportunities that many of the schools utilize to make sure students do stay on track to graduate, regardless of what's gotten them off track.
Okay. Thank you. And second, I'm very curious on this idea of this cohort-based schedule. Can you tell us a little bit more about if that's something that will be considered as we move forward with schedule?
That particular question that came from them did not get a lot of discussion. We'd have to follow up with the principals to see exactly what they had in mind by that. I think that terminology of cohort-based instruction is something that would have different meaning for each of them. I believe, without speaking for them, that they were looking at when a student comes in and they have a particular set of prior experiences. What is that going to look like for them as they go through as a cohort? For example, we have students that enter our high schools with high school credit from their middle school experiences in algebra or physical science. That type of student, or that cohort of students, would need to be scheduled for different courses as they come in than those that may come in with some deficiencies that need to start off in a foundations of algebra instead. And so when we look at those groups of students that come in, we'll be well prepared for those students to have the experiences they need to graduate in a timely manner.
Very well. Thank you so much.
Certainly.
Ms. Johnson?
Thank you for that beautiful presentation. My question is, so we chose to do hybrid. Let's say, and that's for everybody in the system, all the high schools in the system. Let's say they did that for a year or 2 years and said, this is just not working. Could they go back to traditional block if they find it's not working for them?
Yes, ma'am. That will be part of our continuous improvement process. We will assess if this is working. We will make adjustments as needed when we see that we might need to.
But whatever decision is made, it's for the entire system, not just 1 or 2 schools.
Correct. It's collective among all 7 of our high schools, all 6 of our high schools. And our SOAR Academy, Dr. Danley, was also part of this discussion as well.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any more questions? Thank you so much. That was very enlightening. With no further questions, now we have IS2, which is a presentation provided by Deborah Denard, the ELA coordinator for secondary. She'll be sharing information about the Right Score Writing Assessment Program.
Good afternoon, President Morgan, board members, and Dr. Jones. As it was just stated, I will be discussing our program for secondary writing, Right Score. Dr. Rogers has already discussed what we believe, how we maintain accountability, how we achieve victory in our schools. So we'll get right down to it and begin to discuss ELA. In English language arts, the standards that are taught are organized in 2 domains: reading and vocabulary, and writing and language. These domains are weighted 53% for reading and vocabulary and 47% for writing and language. Throughout the years, we have been able to make improvements in reading and vocabulary because we have been able to monitor the progress through benchmark assessments through our platform, School City. It has been difficult over the years to do the same with writing because we haven't had a program in which to do so. With writing and language weighing almost half of the ELA milestones, you can see how this has been problematic. So, in ELA, the writing portion, that 47% of the milestone, students have to take two writing assessments. The writing portion can be comprised of all three of these. Every single student in secondary grades has to write a narrative piece. So when they get their milestone, every student writes a narrative piece. A narrative is a story, or is just where a student will develop a real or imagined experience or event. Students have a 50-50 chance of getting an argumentative essay or an informational explanatory essay. We don't know which one they're going to get, but we know they're going to get either one of them. An argumentative essay takes a stand or presents an argument and claims on a topic. An informational essay examines a topic, conveys ideas, concepts, and information through the selection, organization, and analysis of relevant information. So, in front of you, you'll see how the writing is scored. You all should have the rubrics in your packets. This is an informational rubric, but the argumentative rubric is similar. The Georgia Milestone data for argumentative and informational writing is based off a 7-point rubric. You'll see the trait that says idea, development, organization, and coherence is weighted 4 points. And then the language usage and convention, students can score up to 3 points. Again, every student has to take a narrative assessment. And with the narrative assessment, it is scored on a 4-point rubric. And you can see the criteria. So, let's look at some trend data. The argumentative and informational writing part of the Georgia Milestones is scored on a 7-point rubric, as I've said. Students, again, have a 50-50 chance of getting either argumentative or informational. So you can see here on the left-hand side where it says ideas and coherence, those are the scores that we've had in 2018, 2019, and 2021. And you can see where some of our students had argumentative and some had informational and what they scored for each year. They are color-coded and you can see the legend at the bottom. On the right-hand side, you can see how they could have scored up to the 3 points in the language usage and usage and conventions domain. And again, you can see the legend at the bottom and how they fared. So that's argumentative and informational. Again, we have a narrative assessment that students have to write where they can score up to 4 points. Again, you can look at the bottom and see what the legend is. These are 6th through 11th grade for the past 3 years. And you can see how many that got each designation. So this data pointed to the fact that there was definitely a need for a systematic way to monitor the progress of student writing before the Georgia Milestones. There was also a need to support teachers with resources to assist them in writing instruction. So, we selected WriteScore, which is a wonderful program. WriteScore is a writing benchmark that fully aligns to the Georgia Standards of Excellence for English Language Arts, K through 12, for writing, and provides materials to help measure and instruct on those standards. This writing program consists of 3 main components: hand-scored, text-based assessments for informational, explanatory, and argument writing, as well as narrative writing. Detailed, accessible writing data at the student, class, school, and district levels, and robust instructional materials to support student writing and to save teachers time. So let's just take a look at what it looks like. WriteScore offers a variety of resources to support student learning. Teachers have at their fingertips step-by-step lesson plans, PowerPoints that are already created for them, student handouts, as well as teachers' editions. These lessons are organized by the 2 domains from the Georgia rubric in which the students are assessed. These lessons are developed to respond to the students' scores, or they can be used as standalone lessons. For an example, if students receive feedback from the benchmark that the paper wasn't focused, there is a lesson plan already created to address that. And if you look at the screen, you will see where the tabs are under teacher resources. That's just an example of what it would look like for a 9th grade teacher. You see the heading that says Idea Development, Organization, and Coherence. That comes straight from the domain and straight from the rubric. And you can see the lessons that some of the lessons that they have to choose from as they prepare students for writing. Next, you'll see an example of what a lesson plan looks like with the materials, the resources, and explicit instruction of what they are to do. Underneath that, you will see an example of a student handout, teaching a student how to write a thesis. And then at the very end, you will see an example of what the PowerPoints that are already created for the teachers. You'll see that that's there for them as well. So this is just an example of what some of the resources look like. Next, I wanted to point out the similarities in Write Score and the Georgia Milestones. On the left-hand side, you'll see a release assessment from the Georgia Milestones. Notice the prompt at the top, and then the checklist in which the student has have to look at in order to be successful. On the right-hand side, you'll see the writing prompt from September's benchmark, and it is set up in the same exact way. So, here is a view of what the teacher's dashboard looks like after they receive the papers back, after the students have been assessed and they get the benchmark data back. So these are actual results from one of our 9th grade teachers' class. These students wrote on an informational paper based on the prompt in the previous slide, and this is the data that the teacher is given to inform his instruction to improve the writing. The teacher resources are aligned to the feedback. So if you look at the graph on the screen, you'll see where I have marked out the student names to protect their privacy. But next to that, you will see a green column that says Idea Development, Organization, and Coherence. Remember, this is the domain that they can score up to a 4. So you can see what the students received. And in the peach column, you will see language usage and conventions, and they could have scored up to a 3 there. So you can see the 7-point rubric there. And then you'll see a green shaded area where the teacher gets feedback from where students are, whether they had strong introductions, whether they had weak introductions. She can look at each student, see exactly where the students are, what the students' needs are, so that he or she can address those needs. And then the peach would be from that language usage and conventions domain with the same sort of information. The orange graphic on the right-hand side are lessons that the teachers can click on to address the weaknesses that you see in the student graph. We can also drill down to the student level. So the teacher gets that graph that we just saw, but then the teacher is also able to drill down to see exactly what the student wrote. And you'll see 2 examples there. You see an example where you see the graphic for that particular student. This particular student got a 2 in ideas, development, and coherence, and a 1 for language usage and conventions. And you can see the essay that student wrote. Below this, you see an example of a student that did a little better. This student scored a 3 in ideas and a 3 in language out of a possible 7 points. So you can see exactly what that student got. This allows the teacher to be able to respond to the student needs and to help improve the writing based off benchmark. So what did our first assessment look like? We took this assessment in September, and this is the middle school. They all had to do the narrative assessment. And with this narrative assessment, remember this is the one where they can score up to 4 points. And you can look at the legend and see where the students were. We see a lot of zeros and a lot of ones. And although this is, the data isn't great, the positive thing about this is we're getting it now and not in March when we have the milestones. So we're able to actually address it. And then you see the results from the high school. They, in 9th and 10th grade, they had to do, I think they had to do an informational paper, if I'm remembering correctly. But it's a 7-point rubric, so you can see there are more colors there. And then the 11th grade had to do the narrative, so that was a 4-point rubric. So again, the positive about this is after looking at the data, I've been able to respond to the data, principals have been able to respond to the data, and teachers have been able to respond to the data because we see up front where our weaknesses are in a very detailed manner. That's the whole reason why it was a need to get right score. So some of the things that I've done is I've met with the administrative teams for each school to discuss the results of the data. That included the principals, the assistant principal, the instructional coach. During that meeting, they were trained in how to utilize those resources to respond to the data that they received in order to strengthen instruction. From that, the principals were able to go have, or the instructional coach or a member of the administrative team were able to go and have data talks with the teachers about the results and discuss writing goals and plans, as well as the teachers were able to also go in turn with their class and have data talks about the results of the writing and discuss writing goals and strategies. Also since then, I've conducted several district-wide training sessions with teachers during the asynchronous days. The latest one being January 6th, where we actually took all of the data, analyzed it, and as a team came up with strategies to prepare for the assessment that they're taking this week. This concludes my report on right score. Are there any questions?
Ms. Johnson?
Thank you for your presentation. You said that the students were having difficulty making progress on the right score, and I totally agree with you. I studied this report very intensely, and I came to the same conclusion that you did, that they need help. So I'm assuming that the right score is a diagnostic tool to show us where the students are at that particular time. Was in September.
Yes.
So we should be able to look at that September data and see where the students fail and be able to prepare them in those areas where we know they're weak, prepare them for the milestone test.
Yes.
So when is the next test that they will take prior to the actual test?
They're actually taking 6th through middle school and high school are actually taking the benchmark now. And they will take another one at the end of February so that the teachers will have about, they'll have a few weeks to prepare based on that. And think back to the graphic that we saw earlier. It's very detailed with exactly where students need help, and the lessons in the platform address those weaknesses.
So when we do the next benchmark, what you call it, is it benchmark, the next?
Yes, it's a right score benchmark.
Right, so when we do the next one, we should see some improvement from the one in September.
That is exactly what I expect, yes.
And then when we do the actual test in March, we should see even greater improvement.
I would think so. However, I will tell you, if the students took narrative in September, they're going to then take informational or argumentative the next time, and then the next time they may take the next genre. Now, again, they should see some improvement because there are certain basic things that everybody should be doing with writing. So there should be improvement, but they're getting different genres. They're getting a taste of everything that they're going to have to actually be assessed on, all three genres.
Okay, so I'm assuming that the teachers are going to be using this data from that first assessment to help those students to improve
Yes,
for the next assessment.
exactly.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sandlin?
Thank you for your presentation. I had a few questions. On page, let's see, I guess it's slide number 9 and 10 is the trend data. And so is that Bibb County? Is that the state? What is that data?
That's from the Georgia Milestones.
Okay.
That's the
which-
data.
Okay. Who's being assessed? Whose trends are these?
That's from 6th through 11th grade collectively
For Bibb County?
for Bibb County.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
All right. And then we go on over to slide 14 for the example of the writing assessment. I mean, that's a terrific summary of what the assessor is looking for and compared to the milestone. My concern is, it says that's a grade 7 assessment. Are they at the reading level at grade 7 where they could understand all of the information in that checklist?
The information that comes from the checklist also comes from the rubric. One of the things that teachers have been, had some training around, and we talk about all the time, is to ensure that the students actually understand the rubric. So a lot of times the rubric is not written for students, but we have to break it down for students. The thing that I tell them all the time, all of us that have gone to school, the first thing we do when we get into class is look at what we're going to be assessed on, and we need to teach the students to understand the rubric. So as they're writing, they're having an understanding right away of exactly what they're looking for. So after they've been trained on the rubric, when they see that, they actually know what it is that they need to know.
Okay, because I can just imagine a 7th grader looking at that and going, what?
No, we have to give explicit instruction
Okay.
in what that means.
And then on the drilling down to the student level, slides 15 and 16, it says that this is hand scored. Who is doing the scoring? How does the data get there?
Okay, what happens is, for an example, the students are taking a test now, and when the window closes, the people at Write Score actually have people that they send it off to with our Georgia rubrics. It takes about a week, sometimes it takes a week and a half, and then they send it back to us in all these wonderful charts, and then we get to actually see what students wrote. So when students are assessing, it's really like in a milestone testing environment where they have a script they read and everything is set up just like it would be the test. They should have been practicing weeks coming up and actually doing work with the teacher, but this is a benchmark to see if they actually learned what they've been taught.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Any other questions? Mr. Jackson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening.
Good evening.
First, thank you for your presentation. And I think I can see now on slide 17, 18 that shows the number of folks that, the number of students that actually tested, and the percentages on there. So thank you for that. How are you using this data as a predictor for student performance for the Georgia Milestone?
This is our first year doing it, so we're going to actually be able to do that at the end of this year when we do a comparison. However, we've had specific schools in the past that have used it, and it's always been pretty close with those schools that's used it. That was one of the reasons why it was selected.
You said some schools have used this before? So this is for those schools, how many years have they used Writing School?
I'm not exactly sure because it varies from year to year, I guess, with the budget of whether or not they're going to get it. So that was one of the reasons why I wanted to get it at the district level, so that I would be able to have a systematic approach to how everybody was using the materials. But I can't really answer that question
Would you
because
say,
I don't know.
yes, ma'am, would you say that the schools that have used Writing School in the past have shown significant increase in their students' performance on the Georgia?
I will say that some of them have. The ones that did it with Fidelity, which is another reason why at the district level, I wanted to be able to have it so we can manage it and make sure that that happens.
I would be interested to see that data, we could get that of those schools that have implemented Fidelity, as you mentioned, to see what that improvement has been over the course of their time for using it.
I'm not sure if anybody's really done it in the secondary. It's been done in the elementary. And I used to be the K through 12 ELA coordinator, so I've seen it over the years with them. So I'm not quite sure whether or not we've actually done it in the secondary level.
But we have seen progress for
Yes.
the elementary. Very well. So what's, in your estimate, what is this data saying about where our students are in terms of writing?
What the data is saying to me, as I've drilled down, because I have drilled down and looked at some of the essays, some of the things that I've noticed from the data is the students do not have stamina. Because they do not have stamina. Because a lot of times, some of the things that I've seen, student write just a little paragraph and then they're done. So that's one of the things that we're working on. During the last training, when I spoke with the teachers, I told them we really have to have those data talks with the students and talk about the zeros and ones, because I know that our students are better than zeros and ones. So it speaks to me that they don't have stamina and that there are certain areas that they really have to work on, focus and organization.
Okay.
From the things that I've noticed in the essays that I've looked at.
And that kind of leads me to my next question or comment. I've been doing a lot of research recently on the importance of cursive writing and just the impact that cursive writing has, positive impact that cursive writing has on teaching students how to actually write. Also the cognitive development and just the integrated knowledge altogether that cursive writing has. Do you see a need for a return to the teaching of cursive writing in our school?
I'm not sure that we've ever left cursive writing because it's a standard. It's a 3rd grade standard and a 4th grade standard. And I know that that's something that I emphasized when I was K through 5. That it's something that I've emphasized for years, and I think Ms. Ford has done the same thing. At the state level, there's actually a document on the importance of cursive writing when you go to the standards. So it's also something that is a focus at the state level, that's not something, when they rewrote the standards, initially cursive was left out, and at the state level, they put it back in, and it is taught in 3rd grade and 4th grade.
Okay, so I was under the impression that cursive writing has been taken out.
It's a 3rd grade standard and a 4th grade standard.
Okay, and they're teaching it for proficiency and not just the basis of cursive writing?
Now, I'm the secondary coordinator, but to my knowledge, I don't want to just speak out of turn. I think so, but I monitor what's going on 6 through 12.
Very well.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Null.
Any more questions? I might want to add a little personal thing in here. I have actually worked with Right Score at Springdale when I was there from 2011, 2016, and it was an amazing program. Not as data-driven as it is now, because, I mean, you know, there's so much more that is available than was available when I experienced that, you know, working as a inclusion teacher. So it's really a great model for our kids to know this is what they're expected to do. They do the benchmark testing just like you would do it as if it were the Milestones. So it is a wonderful program I have seen at the elementary level, and I applaud us being able to have it system-wide. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Bernard. So, based on what you've said and based on the comment from Dr. Garrett, so the references have been made about the use of right score at the elementary level, right? So, do you think there will be a right fit for it at the secondary level?
I think there's definitely a fit because, again, when you look at the slide that I showed you with the percentage of our scores and what counts towards the CCRPI, we've been going up every year on the reading section, and we've been kind of staying the same at the writing. And it is just my belief the reason we've been staying the same at the writing is because we've had no way of measuring of where students were going to score before the milestones. So I think it is very appropriate for secondary. The essays and the prompts that they have are very much in line with what middle schools and high school students would be reading, the level in which they should be reading. So I just think it's a benefit because it prepares us for what we need to be prepared for.
I was just wondering, you know, if this is an evidence-based approach for secondary, but thank you for that, for your response
Okay, thank
and
you.
your report.
Thank you, Ms. Denard. I really want to thank y'all for providing me two examples that highlight the level of excellence that's expected and practiced in this district. I believe this is really victory and progress, and I appreciate it. Mr. President, that concludes the business of the Instructional Services Committee.
Thank you, Dr. Garrett. Up next is Fiscal Support Services Committee. Dr. Woodford is the chair.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening. The Fiscal Support Services Committee has on the agenda this evening a presentation and two action items. Up first is FSS1, the monthly financial update, which will be presented by Ms. Sharon Roberts.
Good evening, President Morton, board members, Superintendent Dr. Jones. This afternoon, I will be presenting the financial statements for the period of November 30th, 2021. We'll look first at the comparative of fiscal year 2022 compared to fiscal year 2021 for the 5 months ending November 30th. Here you'll see that for our total assets are $109.7 million. If you look at cash and investments combined, they equal $91.6 million, which is 83.5% of our total assets. Compared to last year, total assets was $92.3 million, an increase of $17.4 million this fiscal year. Our total liabilities is $18.2 million compared to last year's $24.4 million. And our total fund equity, $91.5 million compared to $67.9 million, a $23.6 million increase. Our statement of revenue and expenditures for the general fund shows that our total revenues is $116.5 million. The largest percent is in our local taxes. It makes up 54.2% of our total revenues. The next largest category is our state QBE and equalization funding, which is 42.2% of our total revenues received. Prior fiscal year, we had received $113.9 million at that point in time. We've received $2.5 million more this fiscal year. Then if we look at our expenditures by categories, our total expenditures is $83.1 million compared to $81.8 million, a $1.3 million increase. Our largest item is our instruction, which is 63.4%, $52.7 million, or 63.4% of our total expenditures. Next, we're going to look at comparing actuals to our budget. So our total revenues budget is $202.6 million. Actual receipts to date is $116.5 million. We have received 57.4% of our budgeted revenues as of November. Our expenditures, the budget is $211.5 million. We've received $83.1 million. We have an additional $6.8 million committed and encumbered for a total committed to date of $89.8 million. So this makes up 39.29% of our total budget that has been actually expended. And also, we would expect to be right at 41%. So we're running just slightly below budget at this point in time. Next, we'll start looking at all funds combined, the balance sheet. You'll see on this slide that our total assets, and excuse me, I'm looking at my paper so that I can actually read the number here. It is, excuse me, $690.1 million. Our graph shows that the largest percentage of our assets is from our buildings at 66.5%, and then our investments is 18.2%. If we add up our fixed assets, that's 76.61% of the total, and our cash and investments 18.7%. So these two categories alone make up 95% of our assets. Next, our total liabilities are $66.4 million. Our largest percentage is our accrued salaries and benefit payable at 39%. Our bonds payable is 24%. This graph right here shows that the largest percentage of our total fund equity is our assets, which make up 84.8% of the total fund balance, and the general fund makes up 14.7% of our total fund balance. Next is our statement of revenues, expenditures, and encumbrances. Our total revenues are $164.7 million. You'll see here also for the CARES and ARP funds, that is $13.9 million that we've received for this fiscal year as of November. On this next pie chart, you'll see that our largest percent of our total revenue for all funds combined is our property taxes and our East Bloss revenues at 47% of the revenues, and our QBE and equalization is 30%, and our federal grants make up 12% of our revenues. Next, our expenditures. Our total expenditures for all funds combined is $131.1 million, and CARES and ARP combined is $15.6 million. On this graph, it shows that instruction is 48% of our total expenditures, pupil services 5%, improvement instructional services 6%, and then if you add those three together, they are 59% of our total expenditures for all funds. And that concludes the financial report for the month of November.
Thank you, Ms. Roberts. Are there any questions? Thank you.
Okay.
Next, we have FSS2, FY 2023 budget calendar, and CY 2022 FY 2023 millage rate calendar. And this is an action item which will be presented by Ms. Roberts as well.
Thank you. Board Policy DCCA directs administration annually to provide a budget calendar for the ensuing fiscal year. This calendar provides target dates for meetings such as budget work sessions, public hearings, committee and board meetings for tentative and final adoption of the budget, and we've also included tentative dates for our millage rate, public hearings, and our tentative and final adoption. The recommendation, it is recommended that the Bibb County Board of Education approve the district's proposed FY 2023 budget and calendar year 2022 millage rate calendar.
Thank you, Ms. Roberts. Are there questions for Ms. Roberts? Is there a motion to accept? So moved by Dr. Dillard, second by Ms. Johnson. Further questions? There being none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The motion carries unanimously and will be sent to the consent agenda. Thank you, Ms. Roberts.
Thank you.
Next up is FSS3, Greenhouse Herd Elementary. This is an action item presented by Sam Kitchens.
Thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon, board members, President Morton, Superintendent Jones. Capital Programs Department is presenting the memorandum recommending a firm to provide services for construction of a greenhouse at Herd Elementary, and it's recommended the Board of Education authorize the superintendent to enter into contract with T&D Mechanical Incorporated to provide services for the construction of a greenhouse at Herd Elementary School in the amount of $185,867. This project will be paid for with American Rescue Plan CTAE funding.
Thank you, Mr. Kitchens. Are there questions for Mr. Kitchens? Yes, ma'am, Dr. Dillon.
Mr. Kitchens, I was questioning why are we choosing to use the American Rescue Fund as opposed to other funding?
It is a funding that is available for this, and it's not an East Walsh project that was on our list of East Walsh projects. So it's just available funding that we would be able to use.
And it's permissible for us to use that funding?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
All the projects have to be sent to the state for approval, pre-approval.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Other questions, board members? Ms. Hanlon.
Sam, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kitchens, for your presentation. One quick question. Is this out of the school's $1 million CT budget, or is it out of another budget?
Good evening. It is out of the CTAE ARP funding.
Okay. Thanks, ma'am.
Mr. Morton.
Assuming the board approves this RFP, when do you think construction would start?
The longest lead time would be getting materials here. If we can get the materials here, we'll have it completed before school starts back.
Thank you.
That's our intention.
Other questions, board members? Ms. Johnson?
Will this greenhouse be something like the greenhouse at Northeast, where the students control the planting and then they sell their products to the community, etc.?
Yes, ma'am, and I'm not sure if you guys are aware, but Herd was selected out of the state as one of the pilot elementary schools for agriculture, and that will allow students to build that pipeline to go into Rutland Middle School and Rutland High School. So this is the reason for the greenhouse, to make sure we can build that continuity between the elementary, middle, and high school. And so they will definitely be following all of the FFA guidelines and being able to produce produce and flowers as well, just like they do at Northeast. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Other questions? Board members, you've heard the presentation. Is there a motion to accept?
Move for acceptance.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Second by Dr. Dillard. Questions? Being none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously and will be sent to the consent agenda. That concludes the work of the Fiscal Support Services Committee. Mr. President, and FSS2 and FSS3 move to the consent agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Woodford. Next, we'll hear from Policy and Rules Committee. Mr. Jackson is the chair.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good evening once again to my colleagues and Dr. Jones. We have 4 items today for second reading and 5 items for first reading. So we'll start first with PR1 policy IFBGE, Internet Security.
Good afternoon, President Ward, board members, and Superintendent Dr. Jones. There have been no changes to the policy since the first reading. We are making some minor changes, however, suggested by Ms. Hanlon to the regulation. I can tell you what those are. It is recommended that the board approve the revision of policy IFBGE, Internet Security.
All right. You say you were going to tell us what the
Yes. If you would look at the regulation on page 1, first line, if you pull up the regulation, okay, first, whoops, scroll back down a little bit more, okay, where it says unreleased and classified financial information, we will add word and operational information. Where it says student's password, on the third line down, we'll pull the bullet point there. The district views, if you see that, to ensure the security of all company-issued devices, that's a typo, should say district-issued devices. And then on page 2, it states to contact the IT department. That a request to define exactly what that is. We'll probably change that to the technology department or the executive director of technology. And with that, our recommendation is that the board approve the revision of policy IFBGE, Internet Security.
Very well. Thank you, Ms. Hanlon, for your eye for detail. Board members, you've heard the recommendation. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Johnson, second by Ms. Hanlon. Are there any unreadiness? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right, that passes unanimously. We now move on to PR2, policy GBKA, professional personnel layoff.
There have been no changes to the policy since the first reading. As recommended, the board approve the revision of policy GBKA, professional personnel layoff.
Very well. Board members, you heard the recommendation. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Motion by Dr. Woodford, seconded by Dr. Garrett. Are there any questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Ayes have it, that passes unanimously. We now move to PR3, policy MK, Educational Accreditation Agency.
There have been no changes since the first reading of the policy, and it is recommended the board approve the revision of policy MK, Educational Accreditation Agency Relations.
You've heard the recommendation. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Johnson,
Second.
second by Ms. Hanlon. Are there any questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Ayes have it, that passes unanimously. We now move on to PR4, policy ML, professional visitors and observers. Colleagues, you should have a green sheet on your desk for you to pull at this time. Go ahead.
After receiving input from board members and Mr. Jackson, minor changes have been made to make clear that the policy is not applicable to board members. The proper protocol for visits by board members to schools is found on pages 27 through 29 of Bibb County Board of Education Board Handbook. Also, a definition of professional visitors and observers has been added. It is recommended the board approve the revision of policy ML, professional visitors and observers.
Thank you, sir. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Motion by Dr. Woodford,
Second.
second by Ms. Johnson. Are there any questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right, that passes unanimously. Thank you, sir. We now move on to items for first reading, and we'll start with PR5, policy BCB, board procedures.
The materials provided reflect no changes that made to policy BCB. We intend to make a small change to policy BCB before the second reading that adds school safety and cybersecurity as topics for executive session. The district will post policy BCB on assembly to receive input from board members and stakeholders for 30 days. The policy will be brought to the next board meeting for second reading and final board adoption and approval.
Were you reading BCB or BCBK?
I believe I was reading BCB.
All right. My BCB just says no changes have been made to about board procedures.
Right, and at the outset, I pointed out that the materials provided reflect no changes have been made to that, but we intend to make a change, a small change, as school safety and cybersecurity.
Very well. All right. PR6, policy BCBF, rules of order.
Minor changes are made to policy BCBF, rules of order, to make the policy consistent with current board policies. The requirement that the board use Robert's Rules of Order as a general guide remains in place. The next steps will be as previously stated.
Policy BCBK, executive sessions.
Policy BCBK is revised to update the circumstances under federal and state law that allow for the board to go into executive session. The revised policy now contains the same circumstances for executive sessions as are outlined in the executive session affidavit found in BCBK E1. There are no changes recommended for the regulation. The next steps will be as previously stated.
Thank you, sir. And let's see, policy BCBFB, suspension of rules.
Policy BCBFB is being recommended for rescission. Policy BCBF, Rules of Order, which we just read, sets forth that the board will follow Robert's Rules of Order as a general guide. Suspension of these procedures or other board policies provided in policy BCBFB is unnecessary and is inconsistent with policy BCBF. A review of other school district policies found that the policy is not commonly used by other districts and no such policy is contained in the suggested policies of the Georgia Department of Education. The next steps will be as previously stated.
Also, GAKA, reduction in force.
Policy GAKA and its regulation, reduction in force, offer employment are being recommended for rescission. A reduction in force and the procedures used to conduct a reduction in force is now solely addressed in policy GBKA, professional personnel layoff. A review of other school district policies found that policy GAKA is not commonly used by other districts. Many school districts address a reduction in force through policy GBKA. Policy GBKA and its regulation were just approved. The next steps will be as previously stated.
Thank you, Mr. Joyce. Mr. President, this completes the work of the Policy and Rules Committee. PR 1, 2, 3, and 4 passed unanimously. We sent to consent agenda. And colleagues, just a reminder, PR 5 through 9 is for first reading today. And have any questions, get with Mr. Joyce, myself, or Dr. Jones ahead of our next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson.
Sir, may I make a statement, please?
Certainly.
Mr. Jackson, I think it would help if you would let Mr. Joyce just practice supercalifragilisticexpialidocious as he's going through all those different letters. I just started smiling when he was going, but you did a great job. You did not pronounce any of them, so good job on that.
Thank you for the observation, Dr. Jones. It is quite an achievement. They don't teach that in law school, by the way. So, with that, we will move on to Personnel Services Committee. Mr. Freeman is our chair.
Thank you, Mr. President. I believe we have need for executive session. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to move into executive session for the purpose of personnel matters, future acquisition of property, pending litigation, and/or school safety? Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
So moved. So moved by Dr. Woodford and seconded by our President. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. We are in executive session. motion to come out of executive session?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
So moved by Dr. Dillard, second.
Second.
Second by President Morton. All those in favor of coming out of executive session, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We are out of executive session. May I have a motion to approve PS1, PS2, and PS3 as presented?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. President Morton. Second? Second by Ms. Hanlon. All those in favor of approving PS1, 2, and 3, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Mr. President, PS1, 2, and 3 will be moved to the consent agenda. And
All right.
that includes the business and personnel services.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. As you will note on the agenda, we do have a presentation. We're going to bypass that this evening because of time. You do have that document. Please take a look at it. If you have any questions, please direct them to the superintendent. Also, we do have some information items. Please review those as well. With that, the time is now 6:40. We've reached the end of the committee agenda, and we are now adjourned, and we'll start the regular meeting in just a couple of minutes. Bibb County Board of Education. It's Thursday, January 20, 2022. Thank you to everyone who's here. Thanks for braving the weather. And I apologize, we're a little bit late, so we're going to go ahead and get going. First on the agenda is our Pledge of Allegiance. We have Ray Timmerman, who's a third grader, and Judah Timmerman, who I imagine they're related, that they're brothers, who's a first grader. It's both at Springdale, and they're going to come up and lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance. So come up, guys. Come up, guys. And everybody, please rise.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Go up there with that camera. Come here, guys. Hold that. Hold that. Which one is right? Hold that. Do this on this one. Right here. I'll put it like that. There we go. Yeah, was that in the picture?
Look right here.
Thank you, appreciate it.
All right, we appreciate the tag team Pledge of Allegiance. Next, we have our invocation. This evening, the invocation will be led by Pastor Kevin T. Moore of St. Paul AME Church here in Macon. Thank you, Pastor Moore. Welcome.
Thank you. Let us pray. O thou in whose presence our soul takes delight, on whom in affliction we call, our comfort by day, our song in the night, our joy, our salvation, our all. God, we come today asking for your presence to be manifested in this room. Lord God, that you will be with us as we deliberate. Lord God, we pray that you will bring unity as we go through this difficult time that we currently are in. Lord God, we pray, Lord, that you will continue, Lord, to just shine your mercy and your grace upon us and help us to live out our theme, victory and progress. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. All right, next on the agenda, we have the report of the superintendent.
We don't have much on the agenda for that today, sir.
You just want to skip it then?
We probably could, but we will not.
Okay.
Service on the Board of Education requires a great deal of commitment and dedication on its own. Adding the responsibility of board president reflects even more positively on the heart for students that all of our members have shown. Darrell Morton has served as board president for the last 2 years after previously serving in that role in 2017. And we appreciate his service to our students, faculty, and staff in this capacity. At this time, we'd like to ask Mr. Morton to come forward to be honored with a commemorative gavel for serving as board president in 2021.
Speech.
Where? Here? Here, sir. Okay. All right. Thank you. I didn't do this alone. You know, I've been board president for 2 years. I had the same 2 years Vice President Thelma Dillard, Treasurer Dr. Sandra Woodford. So please give them a hand. They have also. Just, you know, this last 2 years has been hard for everybody. And I know I speak for the board when we say we have been here to support our teachers and staff as they teach under the most difficult circumstances imaginable. The fact that we've been able to obtain a graduation rate of over 80% for the first time speaks to that dedication. And I am so proud of the effort that's been made to make that happen. So give them a hand, please. But we're here to serve you, and it's a great honor And we are just so happy as a board to see the system moving forward, again, under some extremely difficult circumstances. So thank you very much. I appreciate that. I have now tied Lester Miller's record of being president 3 times, so whatever. But anyway, again, thank you, and let's move on. Okay. All right. Next, we have invitations to address the board, and I've got some in front of me. As I call your name, please come forward. You'll have 3 minutes to address the board. It will not start until you start talking. First up, we have Isaac Lightfoot. Mr. Lightfoot.
Good evening, everyone. I came to address the board about the possibility of closing, tearing down the school of Peter G. Apple, which this is my alma mater. Now, I think everybody in the system should be treated fairly. So by virtue of this, evidence is that everybody that went to school in Macon can go by the school and say, for instance, tell their children, that was the school I attended. Every school that's been here since before integration high school, they are still standing, or new schools being built in that same spot. Case in point, Mark Smith and Alaska rebuilt in the same spot. Lanier rebuilt in the same spot. Miller is repurposed as a senior citizen spot. Ballard Hudson rebuilt in the same spot. Willingham and McAvoy rebuilt in the same spot. Even in Griffin, Georgia, where our prestigious superintendent came from, there's a school called Fairmont, which is older than Apple, and it's still being repurposed as an alternative school. So I spent 31 years in the system, and I taught my kids, in addition to knowledge and technical skill, to be good people who respect everybody and treat everybody fair. So if you toe down Apple, you'll be disrespecting everybody that went to school at PG Apple. Everybody. So it's been sitting there for 64 years. And then we just put millions of dollars to repurpose in the back, fix some more things on it. So that would be a bad waste of taxpayers' money to close the school down. It can be repurposed as a senior citizen center, a library, a woman center like Brookdale, or even an alternative school like Fairmont High School, because we need things like that. The east side of town is getting shut of skin and stick of everything, stadiums, otherwise. So if it's been there for 64 years, even though we can find something to repurpose, but don't tear it down. I mean, use it for something else. You think about this, I taught my kids to be good students, good people, and even the employers that I went to, and I worked with them carefully on my students, they were marketing students. And they said that they'd rather have people who have the right character, the right attitude, who are on time, than the people with the knowledge, because they can teach them that. So, as a board and administration, we need to set the right example to treat everybody fairly. Now, so think about this. Please, I implore you. We can find some things to do with Apple. I mean, I talked to some of the people up here. I worked with some of them. I mentored some of them. And like I said, and my aunt was taught in the school where Superintendent Jones came from. But if we tore down Apple High School, imagine this right here, the taxpayers' money right here. This is taxpayers' money. And then if we turn down Apple, this would be just like taking all the taxpayers' money and throwing it up. Thank you. Any questions?
All right. Thank you, Mr. Lightfoot. Next, we have Reginald McGirt.
Good evening. I would just like to offer my support as well as to the building should not be demolished, which is Peter G. Avenue. Being a former alumni myself, I feel that that space should be used always as educational, and always there should be a historical marker, and also building could be used for 3 different purposes, I think, at one time. One, as a career center or trade school where kids can learn classes that will help them in the future, meaning teaching them classes that's like coding, technology, things that's going to be around for a while because that's the world that we live in. And also, we could have a room set aside that could be a museum to give the history of the school. And also a library, because knowledge is power, and I'm just a big avid bookworm myself, and I think our kids need these resources. And I think if we have those resources, we could cut down on the crime, and the kids will have something that they could be interested in. And also, we need to have classes to help our parents get involved in, that maybe even can help them get a GED, and the children and the parents could be learning together. So I just plea that we can find different ways and resources to use it, and to, not tear down history, because history is very important to the East Macon community. And we just feel that it would be a waste of people's good times of working there as teachers, the faculty and students. The present generations or future generations will not have anything to look back on as history. So we just would like to have it stay built, so they can be used for many purposes that can be just a good seed for our future generations to come. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. McGurk. All right, George Muhammad.
Peace and blessings, and thank you for this opportunity to speak. I also am opposed to tearing down Appling, the historic Appling building. And the first thing I would ask you, before you make decisions on your own and what you want to do as a group, what do the taxpayers want? You really need to look at what do the taxpayers want. They're the ones who fund everything that the Bibb County Board of Education does, the hundreds of millions of dollars of budget. And their opinion needs to be considered, the people of East Macon. That's the first thing. Furthermore, this is a historic building and is named after a great luminary of Macon-Bibb County. You had Ballard Hudson and Appling, Peter G. Appling schools are 2 of the pillars of educational history in Black Macon, Georgia. And these need to be preserved. They need to be respected. We made a terrible mistake in tearing down Ballard Hudson many years ago. A group, and it was a perfectly good building, just like this building. And then today you have before you the question of what will your legacy be? Will you do the same thing in your time of tearing down a perfectly good building that's named for one of the great leaders in our community? And it represents educational excellence that so many people in a time when we didn't even have, the superintendent couldn't be Black, the Board of Education couldn't be Black. And they educated us in a beautiful way that uplifted us here in Macon, Middle Georgia. These leaders stood tall and they lifted the community. This needs to be remembered. It needs to be preserved. In this day and time, we need to connect it to a new purpose. And there are many great ideas that have come up. I don't agree with the Warman Center, but there were a lot of other great ideas in terms of education, in terms of arts and culture, in terms of economic development for East Macon. East Macon has a lot of needs. There's a lot of things that could be done with this building. All types of health and fitness training, training of parents, all the needs that the people of the population of East Macon has, as well as a history center. And there's great history in East Macon. In fact, Macon originated on the east side. There's so much history in East Macon, beginning with what happened with the Muskogee people. So much of that can be interpreted. This is a historic institution that's connected to the Georgia Baptist College. And that's one of the early institutions. You have a lot of reasons to preserve a building, and it's so ridiculous and so wasteful to tear down an intact facility that can be beautifully renovated and enhanced and help a people, and instead of wasting money tearing it down, as we so unfortunately often do waste money. Please do not do this. families and preserve this school. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Mr. Palmer. Next up is Ellis Smith.
Good evening. How's everybody doing? I want to give you an idea of what it was like for a hard-headed student. Again, all the instructors hell when I went in the classroom. I was an athlete. That was my only open door out where I could get into an institution to get a Bachelor of Science or a Bachelor of Arts degree. And I got sit back a grade for hitting an instructor that was beating me with a board. But my type of attitude in that setting, I needed that type of discipline, but I wouldn't take it. I don't like people beating on me. Now, what happened, I had 2 years of blueprint reading and drafting. I had 2 years of chemistry. I had 2.5 years of industrial art. And the instructors I had in math was Mr. Blackshear and Mrs. Blackshear. But when I completed in 1968, and I got to throw my hat in the air, I got drafted by the United States Marine Corps. I had already watched 4 teenagers die in Vietnam. Now, I'm saying that to say this. I ended up in the Navy, 14 years in the Navy, 4 years at Fort Valley State College. They never thought I would amount to anything. Peter G. Alton was not a high school. Peter G. Alton was an institution, and it needs to be preserved. That's all I got to say. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Smith. All right. That is the request we have to address the board. Thank you, everyone, for being here. We're glad to hear your opinions. Next up on the agenda, we have the consent agenda, which is where the board approves the minutes from prior meetings as well as the items that passed unanimously during the committee meeting. So at this point, I'd ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda consisting of the confirmation of meeting minutes from the board meeting of December 16, 2021, FSS2, FSS3, PR1, PR1 through PR4, as well as PS1 through PS3. Do I have a motion, board members?
Second.
Motion by Dr. Dillard, second by Dr. Woodford. Questions or discussion? There being none, all in favor of the motion, let it be known by the word aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. That motion passes unanimously. Thank you, board. With that, we move on to new business. Item 1 is the committee board meeting schedule, which is an action item. Who are we going to hear from on that? Dottie, go.
I'll do that one, sir.
Should I do them?
Yes, sir.
I think we're good to go.
Say again? We're good to go?
Station.
Thank you, sir. The last board meeting, the board actually tabled this item so that we were able to come back and review the board meeting agenda calendar. What we have done now is given you a revised calendar. It actually has it so that the board is meeting consistently at a regular time, and it's the superintendent's recommendation that the board approve the dates on the last page of this item. It shows basically the meetings are the third Thursday of every month. And it also has a date for the board retreat as well.
All right. Board members, you've heard the superintendent's recommendation. Do I have a motion to approve? Motion by Dr. Dillard, second by Dr. Garrett. Is there any questions or discussion? There being none, all in favor of the motion, let it be known by the word aye. Aye. Opposed, the same sign. There is none. That passes unanimously. Thank you. We have one last item of new business, which is the election of board officers. Now, I want to make sure I'm around this. Mr. Joyce, you had taken a look at the procedure on this, and I'll get to that point. Let me just, I'll ask you in case it comes up. Okay? All right, I'm sorry about that. So what we'll do, we'll start with the office of president. I'll open it for nominations, and, then we'll go from there. So first is the office of president. And I'm going to exercise a little bit of personal privilege, and I'm going to nominate Dr. Thelma Dillard for president. Is that acceptable, Dr. Dillard? Yes, sir. All right. Do we have any other nominations? All right. Now, Mr. Joyce, my understanding is that even though there is no other nomination, we still have to take a roll call vote. Under our existing policy?
Based on our policy, we can take a roll call.
So does that mean we call the name of each individual board member?
We do.
All right, so I can do that? Is that correct?
I think our board secretary would do that.
Well, why not? Would you like to do that, Dr. Woodford, as our secretary?
Dr. Jones is our secretary.
Well,
You've only been president for 3 years. It's okay.
That's all right. I don't have to do everything. It's okay. All right.
May I have your attention for the roll call vote
Sorry.
for president? Dr. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. Hanlon?
Yes.
Mr. Jackson?
Yes.
Mr. Morton?
Yes.
Dr. Dillard?
Oh, yes.
Dr. Woodford?
Yes.
Mr. Freeman?
Yes.
Dr. Garrett?
Yes.
Mr. President, the tally of the vote is 8-0 in favor of Dr. Dillard to be president.
All right. Thank you. Congratulations, Dr. Dillard. Next is the office of vice president. Do we have any nominations?
Yes.
Dr. Dillard?
I would like to nominate Dr. Lisa Garrett.
Any other nominations, board members?
Dr. Garrett, do you accept?
I'm okay with that.
All right. Dr. Jones? Yes.
We'll do the roll call vote in reverse order. Mr. Freeman?
Yes.
Dr. Woodford?
Yes.
Dr. Dillard?
Yes.
Mr. Morton?
Yes.
Mr. Jackson?
Yep.
Ms. Hanlon?
Oh, yes.
Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
Dr. Garrett?
Yes.
Mr. President, the results of the votes 8-0 for Dr. Garrett to be vice president.
Congratulations, Dr. Garrett.
Thank you.
And last but not least, we have the office of treasurer. Do we have any nominations for the office of treasurer?
Yes.
Oh, Dr. Woodford, I'm sorry. I thought it came from above for a moment. Go ahead, Dr. Woodford.
I would like to nominate my esteemed colleague, Ms. Kristen Hanlon.
Do you accept that nomination, Mr. Hanlon?
Yes, I do.
All right. Do we have any other nominations?
Then we'll do the roll call vote.
Go ahead, Dr. Jones.
Dr. Garrett?
Yes.
Mr. Freeman?
Yes.
Dr. Woodford?
Yes.
Dr. Dillard?
Yes.
Mr. Morton?
Yes.
Mr. Jackson?
Yes.
Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. Hanlon?
Also, yes.
8-0, sir.
Congratulations, Ms. Hanlon. Is there any, that concludes the new business, is there any old business? Okay. I understand from speaking to Mr. Joyce that until I adjourn the meeting, I'm still president. But, but I'm ready to go home, and I'm sure you are too. Thank you all for being here. This meeting's adjourned. It is now 7:10.